What's poppin'? Brand new whip just hopped in. It's your boy Jahid, aka Heedy the Scribe. And today's video, I just want to talk a little bit about world building for my fantasy authors and my fantasy writers. And for those of you who already know, but assuming you don't, world building is basically when you take the world that you created, this vivid little masterpiece, and you present it to your reader in a way that allows them to see, experience, hear, feel, smell, taste the world that you created through the lens of the story that you've written. And writers and authors and world builders, not only is it our job to create these beautiful and enthralling worlds, but it's also our responsibility to make sure we aren't so in love with the thing we've created that we overwhelm our readers with information about our world that they don't really need. A tip I like to remember is that your world is like an iceberg. The reader should only ever get the top 10%, and the bottom 90% should be left for the writer and the creator. So that being said, the most common form of world building that you'll typically see in a fantasy novel comes through exposition. And this usually happens when you have character A introduced to this brand new world of magic or what have you that they previously were unfamiliar with, and you have character B who is explaining to character A the foundation of this world and how things work and its elements and how everything ties together. But then that begs the question, what happens when you have a story where everyone in said story knows how the world already works, so there's no need for someone to explain it to someone else? Then how do you do your world building? And with that being said, allow me to introduce you to the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin, who is a phenomenal author, one of the GOATs in my humble opinion. Fun little fact, this series, the Broken Earth trilogy, every single book won a Hugo Award, which is the first author to ever do that. She's goated. So that being said, I want to give an example of how NK does some world building. Hopefully I can like do a recording of the shit. Anyway, so what N.K. Jemisin does is at the end of her chapters, she introduces a small little tidbit of lore. And sometimes this is like a little anecdote about the history of the planet. Sometimes this is like a little quote. Sometimes it's a little quote or what have you, but it's information about the world that's not relevant necessarily to the story, but it's still interesting information for the reader to have. And it also allows us to experience the world on a deeper and much more intimate and almost intricate level. So one thing NK does that I really appreciate is she puts the lore at the end of the chapter. This way it doesn't interrupt the flow of the story, it's not coming at an inappropriate place, and it doesn't distract me from what's happening in the scene or in the chapter. So that being said, I want to now show an example of another author using the same technique for world building, but in a way I found was a little ineffective. So this next book is Nevernight by Jay Kristoff. Yes, I know some people think he's problematic, but I'm using this book for the sake of an example. Now, again, hopefully I can figure out some way to like screen record whatever it is I want to show. But what Jay Kristoff does is he has footnotes that come in the middle of his chapters. So instead of presenting lore at the beginning of the chapter at the end, he does it smack dab in the middle of a scene or in the middle of a chapter. And what this does, or at least what it did for me personally, is it immediately pulled me out of the story and took me away from what was happening, because he was doing his world building in a way that was disruptive to the narrative. And as you can hopefully see, sometimes these footnotes are half a page long, filled with information that is in no way, shape, or form relevant to what is happening in the moment. And the problem with that is after I finish reading said footnote, if I decide to read it, I've almost forgotten everything I just read that was actually happening in the story. So now I gotta reread all the shit again. And that's not something as a reader that I wanna have to continuously do throughout the course of a, what is this? A almost 450 page novel. And to me, this is an example of world building being done in a way that is going to make readers close the book instead of continue turning the pages. So that being said, I hope these two examples, the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin and Nevernight by Jay Kristoff, have given you some insight, or a little bit more of an idea into how to handle your world building in a way that isn't purely exposition. I hope this was helpful. If you stayed through to the end of the video, you're goated. I appreciate you, and I hope you'll have a blessed one.